Do you actually need a fancy knife sharpener? Can you get a well-made, affordable knife sharpener that will give you consistent and easy sharpening results? Hey friends, welcome, I'm George. If you have some nice knives and you want to keep them sharp, but you don't know how, or maybe you're looking for an easier, more consistent way to keep them razor sharp, then this is the video for you. Today we're going to test 3 fixed angle knife sharpeners from the same brand, and they range from about $60 to $250. And we'll also see if maybe good old-fashioned whetstone sharpening is still the best way to sharpen your knives. Worksharp, over the course of a few years, has released 3 different levels of manual fixed knife sharpeners known as their Precision Adjust line. On the less expensive end of the spectrum, we have the original Precision Adjust, which I purchased on Amazon for $60. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, the Precision Adjust Professional, which I also purchased on Amazon, but for $250. And I also purchased an upgrade kit that in essence upgrades the original Precision Adjust to a mid-level option Workshop offers, and they call that the Elite. That cost me an additional $80. If at the end of this video you decide, based on your budget or need, that the Precision Adjust Elite is the right model for you, you can purchase the Elite on its own. And currently on Amazon, it's around $120. Now, for many years, I've used different knife sharpeners from Worksharp. I'm not sponsored by them, and Workshop has no say in the making or the outcome of this video. I purchased all of the knife sharpeners in this video with my own money. What is a fixed angle manual sharpener and why would you want to use one? You move the sharpening stone, or in this case, diamond plate, over the edge of the knife rather than the knife over the stone. These 3 sharpeners keep the angle fixed so that the edge of the knife is sharp from tip to the heel. Now, mechanical sharpeners use some kind of motor to move the sharpening media across the knife. They're great, and I use them all the time, but I'm really hesitant to use a mechanical sharpener on my expensive knives. When I'm sharpening one of those knives, I want to have complete control over the process. And that is where a good fixed angle manual sharpener shines. It should keep me from accidentally changing the sharpening angle of the knife from heel to tip. If I'm not careful sharpening a big kitchen knife using the mechanical sharpeners, I could screw up the angle, particularly the tip, which really has little contact with the guide. There are also knives that a mechanical sharpener can't sharpen. For example, a knife with a protruding heel, it won't go to the edge, and usually you can't sharpen a serrated edge knife with a mechanical knife sharpener. I typically reserve mechanical knife sharpeners for my inexpensive knives like these 3. They're made by Mercer, and they make a good and expensive commercial 10-inch knife. I purchased these on Amazon for around $20 each. And I'm gonna sharpen these knives, one on each of the 3 different tiers of Precision Adjust Workshop sharpeners, say that 10 times, and go over the pros and cons of each machine so that you can decide if one is a better value for your needs. But I also want to cover sharpening knives using classic whetstones and walk you through the process of sharpening knives by hand. I'm going to also reveal a few tricks and devices that will help you get precise results using traditional whetstones. Now, there are a few questions you should be asking yourself, and the first is, what coarseness do I start with? And that really depends on how sharp your knife is to begin with. This is a best tester. It determines how sharp or dull your knife is. You apply force on the synthetic wire with the knife edge, and it measures the downward pressure. The less pressure it takes to cut the wire, the sharper the knife. So I want to label the factory sharpness measurement on each knife. Typically, anything below 250 is considered reasonably sharp. Below 200 is really good, and below 100 is extremely sharp. So what coarseness do I start with? Here's the issue. These knives here, they were all far below 200, below 150 actually. This one was 103, this one was 152, and this one was 189. I'm gonna dull them up to around 600 to 800 and start the sharpening process for all 3 at 320. So here's a chart which describes different grits and how they are classified, approximately. The higher the number, the smoother the stone or diamond plate. The second question you need to answer is, what is my sharpening angle? Now, to determine that, let's start with the least expensive sharpener of the 3, the Workshop Precision Adjust, and let's get it set up. It's around $60 on Amazon, and out of the box, it's capable of sharpening hunting knives, kitchen knives, and paring knives at an adjustable angle of between 50 to 30 degrees. It comes with 3 abrasive plates. measuring 1/2 inch by 4 inch. A ceramic plate, which is the finest, but Workshop doesn't tell you what grit it is, and a fine diamond plate, which is 600 grit, and a medium diamond plate at 320 grit. This is a knife clamp that holds your knife. The maximum opening of the knife clamp is about 1/4 inch, which is really enough for almost all knives that you will use in your house. Typically, the average Western style kitchen knife like these is sharpened to 20 degrees. It's a good starting point. If you want to stick with the factory edge bevel and you don't know that number, here's how you can determine what that angle is. Start by taking a permanent marker and carefully color the sharpened edge along the length of the knife blade. Now with this particular sharpener, the rod is held in place on the sharpener with a magnet. On the vertical portion of the sharpener is a gauge, and that gauge gives you an approximate sharpening angle. Run one stroke along the length of the knife edge. If the marker is removed, your knife is at 20 degrees. If the front of the marker is removed closest to the knife edge, that means that your knife has been originally sharpened at an angle less than 20 degrees. Finally, if the marker is removed furthest from the knife edge, your knife has been originally sharpened at an angle greater than 20 degrees. These knives are factory sharpened to 16 degrees. But that doesn't mean that you should always set your sharpener to 16 degrees. It's not going to always give you the exact results. Let's assume this fillet knife and this chef knife are factory sharpened to a random angle, let's say 20 degrees. And because the blade on the chef knife is wider than the fillet knife, it will create a shallower angle than the fillet knife. So it's always good to do the marker test and maybe keep a record of what setting you used for each knife. Basically, all three fixed angle manual systems operate the same way. What is the maximum blade length that the unit can handle? Safely, 10 inches. These are 10-inch chef knives. I find that in a typical home kitchen, most people prefer something around an 8-inch chef knife. You start by clamping the back of the knife in the knife clamp, somewhere near the middle of the blade, and then you insert the knife clamp into the holder. It's held there by magnets. Worksharp has a whole series of videos on their YouTube channel about the best way to stroke the stone on the knife when sharpening. A pull stroke is less aggressive than a push stroke. Both a pull and a push stroke together will logically remove the most amount of material in the shortest amount of time. I suggest a pull and a push stroke together, but try not to slide the stone along the edge of the knife while doing it. It will create zigzag serrations on the knife. Instead, sharpen by pushing and pulling in one spot, lift the stone off of the knife, move it over about half the width of the stone, and repeat from heel to tip. You may not see the serrations with the naked eye, but they can affect the sharpness of a knife. A knife that has a mirror-like finished edge is what you're trying to achieve as your ultimate goal. Or not. Again, it's really up to you to determine how sharp your knife should be. No matter what, you want to use light pressure when sharpening. Let the grit of the stone and the weight of the arm do the sharpening. You should not be pushing down on the arm at all with any force. A third question would be, when do I stop sharpening the one side and flip over to the other side? Now, one way of knowing this is by feeling for what is called a burr on the opposite side by gently pulling your fingers from the back of the knife towards the edge of the knife. It almost feels like a slight lip. When you have that lip along the whole edge, you're ready to flip over the knife and sharpen the other side using the same grit. Perform roughly the same number of passes on the other side as a starting point, and a burr of about the same size but less pronounced should also form on the other side when the new side is sharpened. Once that happens, flip the knife over and go up to the next grit. We're going to use the ceramic honing stone on both sides. Now let me take a fast reading on the best tester. 254. Decent. I'm going to continue to sharpen knife number 1 using the finer grits that came with the Elite add-on kit. The Elite kit has what they call tri-abrasive rods, a coarse tri-abrasive rod with 220, 320, and 400 grit diamond plates. These coarser grits are for fast material removal and shaping. The fine tri-abrasive rods has 600 and 800 grit diamond plates and a ceramic plate. Here's what I feel will make a big difference in the knife sharpened with the Elite kit. Included with the Elite kit is a rod with a leather strop on one side and the ceramic rod on the other for serrated knives. The strop can be used plain but from my experience, it works best with a compound. A compound is a superfine abrasive that can be purchased in the form of a paste or as a bar. Both are applied lightly to the leather. You don't want to have it gunk up the leather. It should really make the knife very sharp, and we will put it to the test. With the original Precision Adjust, our best tester gave us a score of 254. Let's see what it registers after we sharpen it with the 800 grit diamond plate, the ceramic plate, and hone it with the leather. 197. Pretty nice difference. Sharp Professional Precision Adjust knife sharpener is far better structurally than the standard and elite models. The top is made entirely of steel and the base is much more beefy with a much stronger rubber grip. The angle adjuster is more fine-tuned and feels more precise. It has 2 sets of scales. There are markings for both the rotating knife clamp and the small knife table. Now, the small knife table is an attachment that provides precision adjust support for smaller blades that might be too small for the rotating knife clamp. There is a significant difference in size between the knife clamp on the Elite and the Pro version. Pro version is much more substantial. It also has an additional clamp support, which is a pedestal that firmly supports the knife holding clamp. The Pro version also comes with a digital angle indicator. Zero it on the table where the place of the sharpener rests. Place it on the rod and it will give you the ability to make easy and precise adjustments. Another exclusive feature on the Pro version is the tilting chassis that can be tilted back to provide clearance to allow the rotating knife to be easily spun from one side to the other, no matter the length. The sharpening handle is different also in that it is magnetic and it holds much larger stones, 1 inch by 6 inch abrasive plates. Now, the Pro version sharpening handle can handle knife blades up to 18 inches or longer at full extension. It comes with 7 abrasive plates and they are easily changed. 5 diamond stones, 220, 300, 400, 600, and 800 grit. 1 fine ceramic stone and 1 leather strop preloaded with honing compound. I'm going to sharpen the second Mercer 10-inch chef knife with the Pro version starting with 400 grit, 600 grit, 800 grit, the ceramic plate, and then I'm going to use the preloaded leather strop. Now, whenever you use the leather strop, you want to pull it along the knife edge. Never push it or you will destroy the leather. All right, let's take a look and see how this Precision Pro does on this knife using our best tester. 193, very similar results to the Elite system. I'm going to sharpen the third knife using traditional whetstones. It's not as hard as you think. It just takes a little practice so that you can get the feel for it. Using them requires a learning curve, but it's almost like therapeutic and definitely rewarding. I'm going to show you the short version of how I do it, along with some tips that I find super helpful for beginners. If you want specific and detailed instructions on how to properly sharpen with whetstones, you can learn for free how I learned by watching the excellent instructional YouTube videos from the master knife sharpeners at Corin. Corin is one of the best, and a link to that video playlist is going to be available in the description. Here is my setup for sharpening waterstones. These are not the absolute best stones you can buy, but they are really great stones and moderately priced. I purchased all of these stones from sharpeningsupplies.com. They're great folks, very helpful, and again, I have no relationship with them whatsoever. I like the brand of stones, and I also like that they're made in the USA. They also sell high-end Japanese waterstones, but for my purposes, these are perfect. Decent whetstones are not cheap. Again, it's also up to you how many grits you should own. The more grit stones you have, the easier the process will be and the better your sharpened edge will become. It's sort of like sanding wood. If you started with a really coarse 80 grit belt sander and then jumped up to a really fine 1000 grit without using any grits in between, the finish on the wood wouldn't be so great. It would take a very long time to remove the hills and valleys, say a 220 grit stone would leave on a knife, with the small amount a 1000 grit stone takes to take off the knife, without the help of finer and finer stones in between. And another added benefit of having more grits is that it allows you to have different starting points. Clearly, the most stones you own, the more it will cost you, but also know that the finer the stone grit, the more expensive the stone costs. And sometimes you could save money by purchasing stones that are double-sided, like these. Ultimately, whatever setup you choose to use, it's always best to sharpen knives by maintaining the edge more often rather than to sharpen them when they get really dull. If you take care of your stones, unless you use them every day, all the time, they're gonna last you a lifetime. Here I have a bunch of stones, starting from 220 to 400 to 600 to 800. Then I have a double-sided 1,000, 3,000. I also have a double-sided 6,000, 10,000. I also have this is a flattener. As you use the stones, eventually they will lose their flatness, so you have to reflatten them. It's very simple to do. You create hash marks using a pencil on the face and rub it in circles on your flattener. You make sure that the flattener has also been soaked in water for a few minutes before you flatten your stones. When the pencil mark is gone, your stone is flat. This particular flattener here, it's double-sided with coarse on one side and less coarse on the other. You should just touch up your stones now and again on the flattener, and try not to let your stones visibly develop a curve in them. Never keep your stones soaked in water all the time. The water will break down the stones eventually. I use these racks and allow my stones to dry for at least a full day before I put them away. And I also keep my stones stored in these special stone boxes, which have ventilation in them, and it keeps them protected from damage. The best addition to my sharpening collection is this stone holder. It straddles your kitchen sink, and what it does is allows you to keep your stones securely in place under a continuous drip of water, and it continuously washes away the metal particles from the knife. And one little aid that is great for beginners is this gauge set. It is inexpensive and gives you a reference point for whatever angle you wish to sharpen your knife edge. Ultimately, you will be relying on feeling, and rarely will you need to use these gauges as you get more comfortable sharpening with stones. You may want to give this inexpensive jig from DMT a try. It will help you understand the motion and consistency of the angle needed to sharpen with a whetstone. You clamp the knife in the jig, you lower or raise the knife using these adjustment screws. They're a little odd, but they like 7 settings pretty much on each side, and they lock into place by twisting them. You place the foot of the jig on a flat surface, the same surface that the stone is resting on, and you draw the knife back and forth. All that you see here is going to set you back around $550 if you purchase all of the grits that I have here. Now, for my purposes, this setup works. It's best for me. You also may want to start with fewer stones. My recommended grits would be 220, 400, 600, and 1,000 to start, along with a leather strop like this one, and sometimes suede. Whichever style leather you choose should perform the same. Start by soaking the stones you plan on using in a tub of water for a few minutes, usually until the bubbles evaporate. So I'm going to start with the 400 grit stone. Let's take a look and see what 16 degrees looks like, kind of right there. I really don't need this. Grab the knife and put your pointer finger somewhere near the heel. Now your other hand should be with your pointer and middle finger on the knife where it will sharpen on the stone. You never want to place your fingers off of where the knife does not come in contact with the stone. And here's the part that feels a little freaky. It's just until you get used to it. You want to place the tips of your fingers on the knife edge and the stone simultaneously. And you'll feel that the knife edge has a very comfortable spot there where it's actually flat on the stone. You don't want to clench the knife hard. You don't want to put excessive force on the blade. You just want to find that spot, and then you're firmly but gently going to pull the knife towards you. And you'll feel the coarseness of the stone on the tips of your fingers. And you just keep pulling it in this motion, keeping track of the number of strokes you take. And then once you've taken a few, you lift the knife up, you go over a little bit more, you move your fingers over, and you pull it towards you again. Again, I have a firm grip, but it's reasonably relaxed. My hand is not tense. And then you just continue doing that until you reach the tip of the knife. Now I'm intentionally going slow here, and as you get towards the tip of the knife, you'll find that you may have to raise the back of the knife up a little bit to ensure that the tip is flat up against the stone. When you're done, you want to gently pull like before and try to feel for a burr. See, here I have a little bit of a burr forming and less of a burr forming here. So you want to keep going until you get a burr. So we go back to the heel and start again. Now I feel a burr going all along the edge of the knife, and I'm going to flip it over. Now, I'm ambidextrous, so for me, all I'm going to do is flip the knife over and continue the process, but I'm also going to move the knife handle to my right hand. You're probably not going to do this. You're probably going to keep the knife in your dominant hand, so you're going to want to sharpen it like the good folks at Corin do. So you flip the knife over, you're going to put your finger more towards the spine of the knife, and similarly, you're going to push the knife away from you, but more so at an angle parallel to the stone. That's very uncomfortable for me. I prefer to flip it over, but watch that video and you'll be able to do it their way, the way that you would keep the knife in one hand rather than switching hands, which probably won't work very well for most of you. I'm just going to switch hands. So again, same process. Index finger goes on the knife, just like on the heel of the knife. I feel for that angle where the knife sets nicely. To me, it's right about there, and I just pull it towards me again, this time doing the other side. And you should feel, again, another burr, but a lot smaller, forming on the other side. Hasn't happened yet. I'm going to go one more time. There's a sound that it makes too when you got the angle right, and you'll feel that. You'll get used to that. It's almost like if you go too high, it feels like you're scraping rather than sharpening. Okay, once you feel that the burr has formed on the other side, that's when you switch stones. So we're going to go from 400 now to my next stone grit up, which is 600. And you repeat the process all over again. Also want to mention, when you're pulling the knife towards you, try to pull it using your entire body, not your arms, because that could change the angle. So pull using your whole body. It makes it a lot easier to keep that angle consistent. And don't hook your thumb on the back of the knife, because as you clench, you could change that angle. So you just kind of want to, like that. Now, because the sharpening system, the Worksharp system, only goes up to 800 grit, and then they use the ceramic stone, I kind of had a feeling, I felt the stone to see basically what grit the ceramic stone was. We don't know. So I'm going to go to 1,000, and then I'm going to do 3,000, which I feel resembles the grit of the ceramic stone. And don't be afraid to stop in the middle of the process and check yourself. Make sure you feel like the whole edge of that knife is resting properly on the stone. You don't want to get relaxed when that happens, because if you do, unfortunately, you're probably going to change the angle, and then you're going to get all screwed up. So just stop, take a breather, relax. If you're in a rush doing this, more than likely you're going to screw it up. It's just got to be one of those things that you do with patience. Throw on some good music or something. Whatever it takes to make you relax and stay focused. I'm going to switch to the 3,000, and then we're going to hit it with the leather. This is one of my favorites. This is from Dew Soil. This is a shining powder that you use on metal, but I really like to use it. You just put a little bit on the leather, kind of get it all over wherever this knife is going to come in contact with the leather, and you'll find out as you use this stuff that it kind of impregnates itself in the leather, so you're going to be using less and less. I gave my old stones to my son, including the suede strap, which he left here. He just got a job working in a professional kitchen, so he didn't really need to have that added expense burdening him, so I gave him all my own stones and my leather strap. So this is a brand new strap here. And again, one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're sharpening with a strap is they get relaxed because they feel the strap itself it acts like cushion. It is more forgiving, but you still want to keep the same process when you're honing with a strap. You just kind of want to, again, just be aware of the angle. And again, never go this way. You'll ruin your leather. I mean, that's a bozo move. The coning compound and the leather really give the knife a really nice mirror edge, and that's kind of what you want. 141. I mean, that's really, really good. It does not take a lot more time to do it on the stones as it would with the machine. Again, it's really up to you what you decide to do with your knives and to what extent that you want your knives to be sharp. 141 is really sharp, so I'm super proud that I was able to do this with just a few passes. It took me about the same time. I am not a big fan of how flimsy the lower end Precision Adjust and the Elite are. They just didn't feel solid to me when sharpening large knives. Now, if you're going to be sharpening smaller knives like paring knives or an 8-inch chef knife, the Precision Adjust, it'll do the job, but it doesn't give you a feeling like it's well made. I am not terribly fond of how these stones kind of click into place. I mean, it's okay, it just feels, again, doesn't feel relatively strong, but it's definitely not rock solid. If you've never used a well-made sharpener, you may be satisfied with the rigidity of this one, but I have to think you will be disappointed with the build of this unit if you have. The clamping knife is smaller, and it took me a while to figure out that you could rotate it without pulling it out. You have to press the back here. It's okay. I really prefer this method here because it has a nice little angle, like a switch that allows you to change the angle. It's definitely much better. It's also significantly more expensive. Without the leather strop and the 800 grit diamond, it didn't get the knife very sharp. But for the average home kitchen, it's acceptable, I guess. It really all depends on you. I'm not convinced that upgrading to the Elite, though, for the added stones is worth the extra money. I think you would be better off buying the Precision Adjust if that's where your budget's at, for say $60, and then investing in a leather strop like this one here. Because I think the leather strop with the compound really does a much better job than that little tiny leather strop that comes with the Elite. It just takes too long. It's too long of a process to strop the edge of the knife. And if you practice a little with one of these, you can strop the edge of the knife on the leather strop and get much faster results. The Elite did do a better job of sharpening the knife than the base model. And again, the proof is in the pudding. The best tester is scored at 197, which is pretty good. And the Precision Pro didn't do a hell of a lot better. It scored at 193. So for half the money, you could get decent results. Again, it really is. You can put more time and effort into sharpening a knife and get better results, probably with both systems. It's really all depends on how much time you want to commit to the knife. But if you plan on using knives that have tight curves in them, like here's an extreme, this is a chestnut knife, you may have added benefit by going with the smaller, narrower stones that come with the less expensive versions of this series. Actually, smaller diamond plates and not stones. If not, you'll be much better off with the larger stones that come with the professional Precision Adjust. I really did not like using the 1/2-inch stones found in the lower end sharpeners. I like using the Pro version. I like the way it feels. It's far more solid and rigid than the base model. I think it offers more value at $250 than the Elite does at $120. But if you're on a budget and the feel of a solid machine isn't terribly important to you, you have affordable options. I really like sharpening my knives with my whetstones. It's my preferred method. If you start off with an inexpensive knife and patiently spend a few hours practicing, you'll be very surprised, maybe even less than a few hours, say an hour. If you practice and you watch those Corin videos, you go back, watch my video over and over again, you'll quickly get the hang of it. It is almost as fast as using the Pro system. Once you have the muscle memory kicks in, and again, I was moving slowly so you could see the process. Also, one thing to consider is the width of the whetstones. It's 4 times wider. These are 4-inch or 3-inch whetstones, 3 times wider than the width of the Pro sharpener. So it's gonna sharpen a larger area faster. Now, the hardest part of using stones is sharpening the tip. You gotta be careful and really feel where that tip is. You're gonna most likely have to raise the edge of the knife to get that tip sharp. And beginners tend to change that angle as they approach the tip. And the hardest part is disciplining yourself to keep the stropping at a consistent angle when you're honing on leather. I guess because it's soft and spongy, we tend to relax and sharpen more carelessly. Don't. Otherwise, you'll roll the edge and then you'll take off all that sharpness that you had. If you'd like to see how my review went for mechanical sharpeners, click on this video and share your comments with me down below. Cheers.